Hey everybody, and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady, and today's video is about the top 10 armies of Warhammer 40k for competitive, as of right now. I've been playing the game since 7th edition, but got really passionate about the competitive side of 40k when 8th edition arrived. In 7th edition there was a very large gap between the good and the bad armies, while in 8th edition that gap is nowhere near as big. Sure, some units are still kinda useless, like Defilers, but every army has access to units that are really strong and can make a competitive list if piloted by a skilled player. But even though the gap is smaller, we still have some clear-cut victors for which armies are the best as of right now in the competitive meta. Of course, the meta changes every so often, so when I feel the meta has shifted hard enough, I will make an updated video. Number 10. Drukhari or Dark Eldar. Last edition, the Dark Eldar were complete garbage. They were true las cannons, and it was kinda ridiculous how easy their vehicles could blow. Seriously, sometimes it felt like a slight breeze would kill a Venom. In 8th edition though, these guys are extremely fast and pack a really mean punch. Every one of their vehicles have the fly keyword, meaning they can all leave combat and still shoot. And their vehicles are actually good in close combat because they hit on 4s. Their poison weapons got a significant buff from the last edition because they can now wound monstrous creatures on 4s as well, so they're great against Nids, Tau, and the new Eldar. Their Dark Lances are really strong as well, having -4 AP and D6 damage. Only strength 8 though. I guess that's the trade-off for being -4 AP. But -4 AP means most of the stuff in the game won't get a save if wounded by this weapon. Their power from pain rule is pretty good and gets better as the game goes. It also starts turn 1 now, which is another buff the army received. All of this, and I still haven't mentioned the best part of the army yet. Most of their vehicles are -1 to hit when being shot at and have a 5++ invulnerable save, which is a huge deal against most competitive armies. Sure, the vehicles are only toughness 5 and 6, but they still feel equal to a Rhino's toughness because of the way the new wound chart is. Bolters wounded on 5s, last cannons wound them on 3s. Just like Rhinos. These things combined with their speed and damage output are what land the Drukhari in the 10th spot for now. Number 9. Necrons. A lot of people think Necrons are bad this edition, but they are still trying to play 7th edition style Necrons. You have to think about 8th edition as a brand new game. Try to forget all of your biases and everything you thought you knew. What worked in 7th most likely isn't going to work in 8th. You have to read your army's new rules and make new lists and strategies based off of that. With that said, let's talk about why they are actually good. In 8th edition, Necrons have access to some pretty cool new rules that help bring the army into the top 10. Reanimation protocol works differently than it did in 7th, and this is the main reason why you have to build your army much differently. Maxed out units of warriors used as a screen or bubble wrap for the rest of your army is the way to go. Units of 20 warriors are almost unkillable to most armies. They also cause a unique interaction where your opponent has to focus fire one unit at a time to stop your guys from reanimating from the dead. This means for the most part they are wasting their whole army to kill one unit, and if they didn't manage to kill it, you can roll your reanimations and get your guys back from the dead almost as a big slap in their opponent's face for their effort. And you can even use a Cryptek to maximize your protocols. Against unskilled players, Necrons are usually auto-win if your opponent doesn't know to focus fire. Oh yeah, and before I forget, their vehicles have a rule to cancel damage from anti-vehicle weapons. That's right, their vehicles have a rule that negates anti-vehicle damage, meaning the best way to kill Necron vehicles is with anti-infantry, which isn't what your opponent wants to do because it's definitely not optimal. The whole army is basically make your opponent shoot a bunch of guns at units that are unoptimal to shoot at because if they don't, they lose. Their weaponry is pretty good too. Ghost Arcs hit like a truck, warriors don't die, and immortals can take out a lot of infantry. Overall, Necrons are in a good spot and fall into the 9th spot on this list for now. Number 8. Tau. Again, a lot of people think Tau are in a bad spot, and again, people fail to realize this isn't 7th edition anymore, and that armies lists from 7th edition don't work anymore. Game mechanics have changed, rules have changed, and the whole game has changed. So again, forget what you think you know, and let's relearn Tau and why they are the 8th best on the armies list. Tau still have access to some really cool tricks. In fact, I think their new tricks are more healthy for the game compared to what they had in 7th. And it looks so much better on the table since it's not just a bunch of Gundams, I mean Riptides. In 8th edition, you actually use troops. For the first time in about 4 years, Tau players will have to dust off their fire warriors. An 8th edition list of Tau is going to have some fire warriors and devilfish to transport them, some ghost kills, stealth suits, and lots of drones. Drones are what make this army good now. You can surround one of your better units like a Ghost Keel with defensive drones, and whenever you take a wound that's going to do D3, D6 damage, you can trade it off to the drone. This means that your Ghost Keels never have to take a last cannon shot to the face as long as my little droney is over there to protect them. Marker lights are different from last edition as well, which is what throws a lot of people off. The main thing about marker lights is you only really want one on the units you are going to try to shoot to get the rerolls of one. This is basically just getting a commander buff for the price of 2 marker lights. Also, because of the split fire roll in 8th, you can effectively mark 2 units with 5 drones on average, meaning you don't need to take as many marker light units as you used to in 7th. And it's not a super huge deal if they all die, like in 7th. Overall, this army packs a really good punch, and when built right and piloted right, it has been on the top tables of a lot of tournaments that I've looked into. Number 7, Alpha Legion. It's been a long time since any Chaos Army has been any good, especially Chaos Marines. And thanks to 8th, we will actually see some chaos on the top tables. Alpha Legion has a spot on this list because of armies like the one we just talked about. Some armies that hit on 4 or worse have a hard time against Alpha Legion because of their trait that makes them -1 to hit at more than 12 inches away. Changing Tau, Guard, and some other armies to go from a 50% accuracy to a 33% accuracy is pretty big. It means a lot of your units won't take as much damage against those armies as someone else would. They have access to some really good units that can fall under that trait too. And you have access to one of the best troop choices CSM have to offer, the Cultist. Basically, the Chaos Guardsman, the Cultist can be spammed and can be used as a screening unit for the rest of your army so that they can't be charged. And if they die, you can always replenish them with the stratagem that replenishes the unit to full, teleports them to any table edge. Alpha Legion fits in at number 7 because they're almost an anti-meta army with the -1 to hit them in shooting. But they don't really have some of the same power of some of the armies higher up on the list, so I think 7 is a good spot for them. Number 6, Ultramarines. Rabute Guilliman is here with all the rerolls. Space Marines have been doing well in 8th with all the new rules for Guilliman. A lot of people argue that he is undercosted, and I would have to agree. But Ultramarines have always been the poster boys for Games Workshop, so it makes sense that they get the most points efficient unit in the game. Alright, enough of my salt. Ultramarines fit into the number 6 spot mainly because of Guilliman and his Warlord trait that allows them to get command points back after spending them. They have access to some cool stratagems, but nothing too game breaking. It's really just Bobby G and his rerolls of everything that puts Ultramarines in the top 6 armies. Sure, they have access to some good weaponry like Razorbacks and Twin Assault Cannons and Storm Ravens, but pretty much every other chapter has access to those units too. It's just Bobby G that puts them above and beyond the rest. Number 5, Harlequins. The Space Clowns come in at number 5 because of a couple reasons. Pretty much the whole army has a 4-up invulnerable save, which is pretty good, especially if you're rolling really hot. All of their stuff can leave combat, shoot, and then charge again, meaning they can constantly be safe in close combat on the enemy's turn, and then jump out on their turn to do more shenanigans. Oh, and did I mention you can give their infantry the equivalent of melta-pistols? Did you like taking saves? Because you aren't going to get any. They are also insanely fast enough to even get a charge off on turn 1, even on the farther deployment types like Hammer and Anvil. I haven't personally played against this army yet, so I could have a few things wrong, so correct me if I do down in the comments. But from doing research on past ITC tournament winners and looking up lists, it looks like these guys are actually really strong, so I think the 5th spot is a good place for them. Number 4, Imperium. I know I already mentioned Ultramarines, but when I did, I meant an army that consists of nothing but Ultramarines. Same with Raven Guard and Alpha Legion, Necrons, and so on. But Imperium is anything with the Imperium keyword. In this case, it's a battalion or 2 of conscripts with some commissars as the screen bubble wrap, then a bunch of Ultramarine stuff behind them. You can also throw in some Grey Knight stuff in there too, but for the most part, the better version of this army is just conscripts with Guilliman and Ultras like Devastators and Razorbacks and Assault Cannons. Number 3, getting into the big ones now. Magnus Mortal Wound Spam. Don't worry, this army is due for a nerf anytime now. Malefic Lords from the Renegades Codex is going to get nerfed because they're too cheap and spammable. Horrors might get another nerf as well. The guys from Frontline Gaming, the owners and creators of the ITC, think the Horrors will get another nerf, so I trust in their judgment and assume that they will get another nerf. Magnus, however, I think is only going to get better when the Thousand Suns Codex drops. A lot of people feel Magnus is undercosted, but I don't think he is, at least when you compare him to Bobby G. Bobby G just has way more bang for his buck and is arguably more survivable because he can hide behind his units, while Magnus is just a big target everyone on the board can see. There's actually a lot of armies where Magnus can die turn 1 to some armies, as long as they roll well and hit them with enough shots. But anyways, back on topic about this army. It goes off of horrors as you're screening bubble wrap units, Malefic Lords who all have a D3 smite, and if they perils they basically become a Demon Prince, and then of course Magnus. Until the Malefic Lord gets nerfed, I can see a Magnus and Morty combo working out, but I have yet to see that, so we will wait for an updated list in the future. Number 2, Inari. Being able to shoot your opponent on their turn is pretty damn strong. Inari does this very well and causes a very unique interaction that usually causes your opponent to mess up. Every time a unit dies within 7 inches of a Inari unit, the Inari unit can soul burst, which means they can either move, do a psychic ability, or shoot. Basically, this army is a giant Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card. Oh, you're happy you finally killed the end card? Well, now this unit of Dark Reapers that is beside it is going to blow up one of your vehicles on your turn. It's the ultimate mind game army, even worse than the Necron mind game, because you never actually want to kill a full Inari unit unless it's secluded or you have to because you don't want to give them free shooting. They spam the Harlequin bikes that have 3 wounds and Dark Reapers. It's actually very effective. This army is one of the easiest to play, but one of the hardest to play against, which is why it fits in the list at number 2. Number 1, Astra Militarum. The last couple of big tournaments had full Astra Militarum lists coming first. They do pretty much everything well. The conscripts create a giant screen for all the mortars and earthshakers in the back corner. The thing that makes their unit strong is because they have a very far range and don't need line of sight to shoot other things, meaning they can hide on the bottom floor of ruins or behind a wall where you can't see them, but they can always see you. Playing against this army is actually very frustrating because the conscripts just take up so much space you can't really maneuver the way you want to in order to shoot the things that are shooting you from behind a wall. It's very annoying to play against, but is very, very, very strong. It counters almost every army on this list and would only struggle against the Imperium lists and other guard lists. The codex for this army is due to come out within the next couple of months, so we might see some changes to the army. I think they will get better, but I do think conscripts need a slight nerf in one way or another. Because in my club, almost everyone has bought enough models to make a battalion of conscripts just to use as a screen for all of their marine armies. Hell, I'm even going to do it for my Grey Knight army. They are just 2 points efficient and are a must-take in every Imperium army. And you can't have a good army without a conscript blob. At least right now. As of right now, they are the most efficient unit for their points other than Guilliman. Well, that was my list for the top 10 armies in Warhammer 40k. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my placements on the list, or even if you have any suggestions for future videos. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy wargaming!